Mr. Speaker, it used to be that when you asked Belizeans what they thought about all the deaths, all the violent murders taking place, that they felt outraged, they felt shocked and appalled by what was taking place. But when you ask any normal Belizean now, Mr. Speaker, they will tell you that they feel numbness. That is the number one feeling that they have, numbness. Because, Mr. Speaker, essentially, our people have surrendered to crime. Our people, Mr. Speaker, feel hopeless and helpless because from all appearances, the government and the police and the criminal justice system have failed us. Each day, Mr. Speaker, it is a vicious cycle of wait and see. Wait and see whose death will be reported on the 6:30 news. Wait and see whose photograph will be plastered on social media with the now infamous hashtags RIP. That is what we're doing. We're waiting around and seeing who will be next, Mr. Speaker. Young journalist, Mr. Micah Gooden, I see him here today for the Amandala newspaper. He made a very disheartening observation, Mr. Speaker, when he cited that not one, not two, not three, but 4 fathers and sons have lost their lives to gun violence in Belize in recent history. 4 fathers and sons, Mr. Speaker. If that is not a wake-up call for this government, then I don't know what is. When I read young Mr. Gooden's post, Mr. Speaker, other depressing statistics began to flood my mind. I began to ask myself, of the 136 youths slain on our streets, how many of those youths received a title to a piece of land from the government of Belize? I automatically ask myself the next question, how many of their last names is Vega? And the answer is none. None of them have gotten a piece of land, Mr. Speaker. That is the blatant inequity and injustice that exists in our society. Every day, Mr. Speaker, and today is no different. We hear stories and scandals of the thousands upon thousands of acres of land being handed out on a silver platter to these special, not normal families in this administration. Mr. Speaker, how difficult is it really for us to set aside a few hundred acres to Miss Diane Finnegan's program, the Youth Apprenticeship Program? How difficult is it to set aside a few hundred acres so that our youths can farm and can cultivate and can fish, so that they can feel empowered, Mr. Speaker? How difficult is that? Mr. Speaker, individuals like Ms. Finnegan and Assistant Commissioner of Police Chester Williams, they have very good intentions and they have very good hearts. But at the end of the day, what they need from this government is access, real access, Mr. Speaker, to the resources. I heard the Honorable Member for College say that, oh, this land belongs to all of us, for all of us to enjoy. It's not just for UDP. Man, all those fancy words mean absolutely nothing if it is not backed up by action. That is not what the member from Lakei just pointed out to us. He just pointed out to us thousands of acres going to the Vegas, not to the deserving families in our country. But Mr. Speaker, let me not lay all the blame of failed policies on the former Minister of Lands, because the ugly truth, Mr. Speaker, that when it comes to crime, this administration has a very long list of absurd ironies. We have, as a music ambassador, Mr. Speaker, a convicted felon who penned the lyrics, "Let us bust shots at them street cops." That is the UDP's choice for our role model for our next generation. So what do we expect? We have a commissioner of police, Mr. Speaker, who has disregarded an order of the highest authority in this land, the Supreme Court. He is disregarding that authority. He is not investigating Elvin Penner. And if the commissioner of police can ignore the order of the Supreme Court, what are we telling the Belizean people? Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister, just look at our Prime Minister. What did he do when it was uncovered that he was borrowing millions upon millions of dollars without House approval? He changed the law to say that it is now legal what he was doing, and it was illegal. Mr. Speaker, what is the message that we are sending to the Belizean people when it comes to crime? To me, the clear message that is being sent, Mr. Speaker, is that crime pays, and if you are a UDP, you are going to get away with it. Mr. Speaker, according to the World Justice Project, Belize now ranks 100 out of 113 when it comes to an effective criminal justice system. Normally when you hear you rank 100, that's a good thing. But what that is telling us is that we are 13 countries away, 12 countries away from being the worst when it comes to the criminal justice system. But Mr. Speaker, what is even more upsetting to the Belizean people, what has them most irate, is that despite all the evidence that has been uncovered, and I won't go into all the criminal acts on that side, but despite all the criminal acts, when it comes to passports and visas and all of that, 0%. We have a conviction rate in Belize of 3%. But when it comes to the criminals in government, 0% of them are prosecuted. Mr. Speaker, that is why our people feel hopeless, and they feel discouraged, and they feel numb to it all. Because on this animal farm, Mr. Speaker, some animals are more equal than others. Mr. Speaker, aside from their personal transgressions, this government also has a dismal track record when it comes to implementing policies to combat crime in Belize. Who can forget the Band-Aid policy of paying gang members millions of dollars to hold things down before the 2012 elections? Mr. Speaker, that Band-Aid has now been ripped off, and the festering wound is now on display for the entire world to see. The introduction of the draconian gun law, Mr. Speaker, another one of their failed policies. All that has done is that it has served to lock up innocent grandmothers, innocent family members, without getting their hands on the real criminals. It has had absolutely zero impact on reducing the prevalence of guns on the streets of Belize, Mr. Speaker. And then there is the GSU, the three most feared letters of the alphabet, Mr. Speaker, a rogue arm of the police department that answers to no one. Essentially, what the GSU has done, Mr. Speaker, is that they have wreaked havoc, brutalizing Belizean families and resulting in thousands of taxpayer dollars being paid out in the Supreme Court because of their abusive conduct. Mr. Speaker, what this government fails to realize is that crime is a social problem, not a militarized problem. Their entire mindset and approach to addressing crime is wrong. All they keep doing is reacting as opposed to preventing. But Mr. Speaker, with our country now in a recession after this government's wild spending spree on streets and roundabouts, and a piñata company for Prince Anwar, education has become completely unaffordable for the Belizean family. Mr. Speaker, if we are to get serious about crime, the education of our young men and women must be given the highest priority. We must give them options, alternatives, and opportunities, Mr. Speaker. Get our children back in school and keep them in school. And if they are not academically inclined, Mr. Speaker, enroll them in a technical program. Teach them a skill or trade. Mr. Speaker, we all know that our people are talented. Take, for instance, young Glavon Gordon Smith of Edward P. York High School, who received the Subject Group Award in Technical Vocational. Best in the entire Caribbean, not just Belize, Mr. Speaker. His example reminds us of the emphasis that must be placed on our educational system away from the worn-out pro-academic focus, member for Collett, to a more technical and hands-on approach. Real-world learning experience. So you agree with me? That is what we need to do. Let 2017, Mr. Speaker, be the year of skills training and the advancement of our national apprenticeship program across this country. Mr. Speaker, and if our youth are not interested in the academics or the skill training, offer them a space in our military, because God knows with Guatemala and their continued aggression, we drastically need to beef up our military. But at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, we must give our young people options, and crime and violence should never make it on that list of options. Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned, crime is also tied not just to education, but employment opportunities for our young men and women. It hasn't even been a month or two into the 2016 cruise tourism season in Belize City, and we can already see the negative effects that the Harvest Key project is having on the tourism sector in Belize City. As much as 70% of the revenue generated by our local tour guides and tour operators have been diverted to the south of the country, which only translates into higher unemployment and a higher crime rate. Don't get me wrong, Mr. Speaker. We do need to expand our tourism product to other parts of the country, but it should never be at the expense of another destination in Belize. We need to expand and grow, not divert and subtract, Mr. Speaker. Put your petty differences aside and let us build the new cruise port at the Stake Bank Island. Mr. Speaker, getting back to the issue of violent crime that is besieging us. As you know, bullets do not discriminate against the young or the old. Just a few weeks ago, Belize lost 7-year-old Tyler Savory, a young, innocent boy full of hope who had his whole life ahead of him and whose only wish on that fateful day was to drink a nice, cold milkshake. But instead, Mr. Speaker, instead of a milkshake, our brutal streets captured him and swallowed him whole, leaving behind his brave and courageous mother, who refuses to accept that this is what Belize has become. She has made it her life's mission to confront crime head-on so that her son's life could be a reminder that no matter how far it seems we may be gone, it is up to each and every one of us to make a difference. She has sounded the call for peace not revenge, in our streets. Today, Mr. Speaker, I salute Shakira Young, and I recognize her as a beacon of hope and a symbol of unity in a time of great personal tragedy. We must all embrace her, Mr. Speaker. We must all encourage her, and we must all ensure that her life's mission of getting our society back on its right track is a successful one. Together we can, Mr. Speaker, and together we must. I thank you.